Hello, and welcome to Ubuntu AI podcast. I'm Andrea, and together with Maciek, we'll be your hosts. From fun experiments to enterprise projects, AI became the center of attention when it comes to innovation, digital transformation, and optimization.
Open source technologies democratized access to state-of-the-art machine learning tools and opened doors for everyone ready to embark on their AI journey. Ubuntu AI will be your guide in the industry where community of like-minded people meet to make an impact.
Maciek, today is just the two of us, and we're going to talk about or to find the intersection of two very interesting topics from my perspective. One of them is machine learning. I think everyone is used to that. And the second one is public clouds. How do they work together? I think looking at the industry nowadays, hardware delivery often takes time. People go on the public cloud to try out or get started with machine learning, and there are tons of pros and cons. What do you think about it?
So actually, if you look at the numbers now, for Fortune 500, 70% of those organizations are already using managed AI services on the public cloud. So for sure, it's very popular. And the only thing that can rival that is like managed Kubernetes services, which is 80% of those. So the Kubernetes uptake was last 5 years. AI uptake was just a year, and it's almost already on the same level in terms of public cloud usage, which is super interesting. And we also see that the major players are Azure AI services, obviously, because the OpenAI is behind those, and Amazon SageMaker. These are two big contenders having like around 40% of the market. And GCP is like half of it, but very quickly getting traction because of the new like BART models being released and so on. But what's also interesting from the data points, because I was looking a little bit deeper into that, it seems that only 10% of all of those users that are using that are power users. So most of the people are just experimenting, playing with it, small deployments and so on. And by power user, I mean people who have more than like 50 nodes of something on the public cloud.
It's very interesting you're saying this because this is maybe an unusual angle. We also see a market of a lot of workstations with GPUs dedicated to experimentation. How do you think those go hand in hand or compete with the idea of just getting started with machine learning on a public cloud?
It's very industry spread because there are a couple of industries which are doing almost all their experimentations exclusively on big workstation like oil and gas. People doing field map analysis, they all have a beefy workstation under the desk because they are not used to send their data sets to the public cloud. The data sets are huge, so the data transfer of the field map would be very expensive and they need to iterate on a lot of them and so on. The same goes for like pharmaceutical research on new drugs and that kind of things, where this is like heavy regulated industries, some financial stuff and so on. But on the industries which are not heavily regulated, almost everyone is going with the public cloud, because even if you try to buy a workstation a year ago with the best GPU that was there, like consumer grade, it will be like 3080 or something like this. This is already super old and slow compared to the workstations that you can buy today, right? And obviously, swapping your hardware that often is not easy to justify to any kind of CFO, procurement, or whoever is paying for it in the end.
I think you're going towards an interesting point, which is really the key factors to kind of consider when you look at AI on public cloud. And except for the accessibility to easily get started, the ability to always have the latest and greatest hardware, it's important as well. I also think that cost-wise, when you're just beginning, public clouds are very friendly. At the end of the day, you don't know if you will like doing AI, you don't know if it really makes sense, or if you're just getting started, maybe investing in an incredibly powerful machine right away doesn't make much sense. Do you see any other consideration or benefit, consideration, let's say there, of kind of selecting the public clouds for AI projects?
I mean, a lot of public clouds are being selected for convenience more than for the cost, because the cost actually very heavily depends on what type of data you have, how big the project is. And it's a very difficult question to say straight out of the bat that like workstations are cheaper or cloud is cheaper. It really depends. But where the clouds are winning in terms of popularity is, first of all of three major public clouds offer amazing trainings. that show you how to get into the technology and start in. The trainings are completely free. So that's how people get started. And obviously, they experiment on the environment that they are given during the training. So that's why a lot of people starting out end up on the public cloud. And the second one is access to models, because you have Hugging Faces already integrated on the major public clouds. You have a nice access to the models that are like given by the public cloud themselves, like Azure AI or Google giving out their Palm models or GPT or Copilot models into users. So it's super convenient and easy to start. And I think it's like lowering the barrier of entry is something that people need to focus on, because it's not like that we have so many people that have like 10 years of experience in ML and they can jump start on any workstation or environment.
So we highlighted a bit the key factors, as well as I think amongst them some of the benefits were obvious. I'm gonna be now the devil's advocate. What are some of the disadvantages of using AI on the public cloud? And now I'm also going back to maybe regulated industries. What other things do you have in mind, Maciek?
So there are three things that people mention about the on-prem stuff and why they are looking at it still. So there is a big uptick on on-prem as a service models, because public clouds are good because you can go by the consumption. But now you have the HP GreenLake, Dell Apex, and so on, and you can basically buy hardware in the same way that you pay for what you use. You don't have a huge upfront investment. So if you are a new startup, don't have enough money yet, and so on, you can get like the same approach that you get on a public cloud on-prem, where you only pay as you go. So that's one thing that makes people interested and why they are looking at that. The second thing is the cross-cloud consistency. That's a very huge table stake right now. People this year, almost all of them in the cloud report expressed that for them this is a concern because of complexity. So actually they are not even looking at cost that much of like data transfer from one cloud to another, but the complexity, because they see that they need to train a lot of new people to work on like Gen AI projects, for example. But training them on SageMaker is completely different than training them on Vertex. And people are afraid that they need to like basically triple the training because they have bits and pieces on all public clouds, and they are looking for cross-cloud consistency. That's another big deal. And the third one is that organizations are trying to consolidate. So all the like financial and infra departments are looking at a thing that they call like the trend hyper consolidation, which basically means that if you have IT, sales, marketing, and manufacturing in a company doing different stuff on different environments, and all of them are now starting to play with LLMs, the department that is responsible for the infra or for infra cost is trying to combine these environments together for better outcome. It can be on the public clouds, it can be across. There are different ways how to do it, but these are the three main trends which are from like the other side of the fence.
Well, Maciek, I'll start with the last one. And whereas I see where it comes from, I think we are a bit far from seeing hyper consolidation in a lot of organizations, because I think for that you need to have very well defined processes and mature AI organization in general, which I think in many enterprises is not there yet. But I'll go to your second point, because I think you're raising a bit of a misconception here. You often mention SageMaker, Vertex AI, and they're great tools, but they're not the only one when it comes to public cloud. We can always run open source tools on a public cloud, and then you can actually get the consistency that you were talking about, and the ability to use any cloud, go on maybe multi-cloud scenarios without any constraint.
Yes, that's actually very true and very good mention.
First of all, we don't talk about that much, or I don't think the industry talks much about that you can use open source tools on-prem, but also on the public cloud and MLOps platforms such as Kubeflow. There is nothing to stop them to run on an EKS cluster, for example. Do you think that's going to be a trend that is going to be approached more as the market matures?
I think yes, because now we see big traction behind the community. So all the big players in the industry, like Red Hat and so on, are investing in those open source projects, and therefore spreading the word and making this a thing, so that people in this Fortune 500 companies even know that this kind of option exists. there is much more buzz around it. And also technically, if you look at what the community is doing and the developers who are actually supporting these projects and building out new features, they are all focused on nicer integrations, because I think that's what's really missing from the open source ecosystem. If you go to cloud-based offering, let's take a SageMaker, for example, because this is the most popular one. If you want to pull data from Kinesis, if you want to integrate with S3 storage, if you want to do visualizations in Athena or somewhere, then this is all super nicely integrated. And I think the whole automation and the glue code that you can build around those open source projects and make them like first class citizens on the public clouds is a very nice thing. And what's really good and what I really like enjoy seeing is that public clouds are actually going in that direction as well, which seems counterintuitive, but they are reaching out to open source communities and helping us to integrate the open source projects into all the other cloud services. So they are not like, hey, you have to use my stuff and that's the only thing. They are actually super helpful and working with us to make open source a first class citizen on the public cloud, which I'm very happy of.
Now, we talked a lot about benefits, challenges. We talked also about public clouds as a low entry barrier to get started with AI. But I think there is another elephant in the room. Like, can you run AI projects in production on a public cloud? And if so, why would you do it? I know the short answer is yes, but we'll go in details.
Yeah, well, I mean, for sure you can, because there are a lot of people doing it. So there is no question about if you can. About running them in production, there are a couple of considerations, because obviously any of these production services needs to be properly secured. It needs to have high availability, good resiliency, and like a lot of like non-functional requirements that are around it. Public clouds are for years really good in delivering most of those. What's tricky in the AI space is the speed of innovation, because a lot of things that you are using in production are like 3 weeks old or 5 weeks old, like new library popping up. Like, to give you an example, a very fun one, there was a open source project called Olama getting a lot of popularity because you can like single command host open source ML model. And there is a new one coming in, Power Infer, which in a lot of cases is 10 times faster. But it's a super new project. It has like a couple of weeks. There is not, obviously, because it's that like in the infancy level, it's not tested up to a level that enterprise grade 10 years existing operating system would be, right? So there are a lot of things that you need to worry about that are not there with like a very old stable software. So,
but there are also a lot of things that are there and they're helping when you run AI at scale on a public cloud. And here I'm just raising one, which is the spot instances. It's also the access to the kind of latest power compute. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, this is not really helping to solve the technical problems. It solves the money problem. It makes the CFO happy, or like whoever pays the cloud bill, for sure. So like auto-scaling groups, spot instances, and a lot of ways how to increase the efficiency of how you are using a public cloud are great. But this will not solve your like technical problems with having to operate latest and greatest innovation on production. And I think that this still needs to mature and improve in a way how we do it, how we make sure that all of this is actually very quickly CV patched, all of this is deployed in a smooth way. You can do upgrades, because obviously new version comes every 2 days. You cannot have a strategy of, yeah, we upgrade once per year, because that's not going to fly.
But then, first of all, I also think that AI as an initiative is kind of a dance that invites many stakeholders from many departments to dance. You cannot only make the technical experts happy, but pay huge bills, because then at some point it's going to be shut down. But going back to what you just mentioned, I agree with you that there are things that are still missing and need to be defined. But at the same time, for example, the public cloud takes away the burden. Now I sound like I work for a public cloud, which is not true, but the public cloud takes away the burden of part of the administrative or maintenance part, right? Like Iron, for example, upgrades easier. At the same time, there are parts that the public cloud can manage for you, so you don't have to worry about that. No?
Yes, there are a lot of things that you can benefit in terms of easier operations on the public clouds. There are also a lot of ways how you can do it on other environments. So that will be exciting to see how this kind of automation and optimizations will grow over the year, because what people are looking at, as we discussed earlier, is about being able to do the operations in a way that is easily transferable between different environments. And I think that will be an exciting story.
Okay, that's a fair point. What about security? When it comes to machine learning, we actually often say that data is the heart of any project, and we need to ensure the security of the environment. Are public clouds secure for that purpose?
Well, I think that the public clouds have great security teams. I mean, I know at least personally, the Project Zero team from Google, but the same teams exist in Amazon and Azure. These are like really the best security experts that I have ever seen. These guys are winning global CTFs, write great disclosure posts, find a lot of 0 days, and like obviously with their level of security knowledge, when they applied both for blue team work and securing the infrastructure, but also red team work and testing out the security of it, I think that if you don't have like a really top-notch security team with tons of experience and so on, you will be better off on a public cloud, because they do. So that's for sure. I mean, you with like zero skills and experience, or like with a fresh crew, securing an on-prem infrastructure up to a level that you get in a public cloud data center is not an easy task.
What about confidential computing? I expected you to mention it, but you didn't.
Yeah, I didn't, because it's not yet there for us as AI professionals. I mean, the confidential computing is there and works really nicely with CPUs. You can run it on like Azure or AWS confidential VMs quite easily. Just select an image, run it, and you can run the same stuff that you run on your laptop there in a secure manner, even using HSMs and so on. What we are still waiting for, but I know that it's coming out soon, is having the confidential computing on the GPU, which will be much more exciting from an ML professional perspective.
Maciek, I might be wrong, but I read recently something on Microsoft having confidential VMs on CPUs and GPUs. Did you miss that, or did I misread that?
I don't know, share a link, we'll check.
Yeah, that's something that I read quite recently, actually, and I was amazed, because I think it will intersect not only two topics, but rather three topics, which is security, AI, and then public clouds. And I think that's going to lead to kind of a third big movement on how to ensure that the security is there. I see Maciek is just looking for the link. He's not listening to me anymore.
Well, you said that you are not going to make technical people happy, so I'm sad that now, crawl back into a technical cave. But no, I was looking at what's possible, and yes, there are some Azure chips right now, some accelerators that Microsoft has. What I meant was more about having like the NVIDIA confidential computing available, right? Not some niche accelerator, but that's what I meant. That what we are waiting for, and we have that with like H200, but it's not yet something that you can like just go on AWS and start a bunch of instances with that yet. It's coming.
Okay, I'm not sure if it's coming or you want it to come, but I see, Maciek. So let's not inform wrongly our audience. We talked about security as well, which is important now. Maybe I have a very basic question. Is it easier to do Gen AI or to use LLMs on a public cloud or somewhere else? Because I feel that if I look now at, for example, Amazon Bedrock it really opened doors and made it easy for everyone, right?
Well, it depends. What do you mean, use or build? Because usage, obviously, you go to Midjourney or ChatGPT and just use it. That's the easiest way, right? If you want to fine tune your models or do some p-tuning or any other
That's where I
sort
was
of
going.
builder exercise, then yes, it's easier on the public cloud because of the tooling and like nice UIs and so on. But on the other hand, I see that a lot of people on the community side, when they are experimenting with those models, they are doing that on their like daily calendars, notes, task schedules, and so on. And a lot of people feel much more comfortable experimenting on their own machines. So like it really depends. But if you are building it as an enterprise project, for sure it's easier on things like Bedrock.
Okay, that's a good point. And listening to this, I see a couple of important aspects that public cloud bring to an AI project. It's of course, low barrier entry. It's compute power, which is either we like it or not needed. I see flexibility in the choices, in the how much you can train, how much you use, and so on. What about the maybe second part of the machine learning life cycle? When we look at the deployment, deploying from a public cloud is possible. The answer is yes, but is it complicated?
Well, then again, that's a big can of worms because deployment can have various ways of how you actually want to deploy the model, right? If you train it and you have a ready-made inference endpoint, it could be a container, then it's super easy to host on a public cloud. But it could be an image for a device, and obviously then you need to transfer it somehow from the public cloud where you trained it to the device. And then you are looking at more of edge-specific tooling. You can also train a model that in the end is a library or a package that you will use in your CI to build applications, like anything that you have in your mobile phone applications, like the AI that is embedded into the app. So depending on what you are trying to build, there will be different considerations about hosting it. Also, performance is super important and where your data resides. And I think that from the public cloud perspective, they are in a very good position because a lot of people have most of their data on the public cloud already. Like if majority of your data sets reside on S3, there is only one reasonable way to host a Docker container with an ML model, which will be the closest to the data as possible.
Okay. I will not ask you to keep names, but would you have an interesting use case to share with us of an ML project on a public cloud that you really enjoyed either working on or seeing it growing?
I think that's the project that I enjoyed working on the most recently was around the confidential computing and basically being able to run an ML training on-prem, but expand to a public cloud whenever you need to. So that's super exciting. And if you want to hear more about it, there is a recording from KubeCon last year where we were together presenting that kind of setup and the architecture and how it worked.
Before whereas people can go to YouTube for the KubeCon talk, what would be a good use case in using that kind of setup, Maciek?
I mean, the best place where you can use it, and that's where we were basically looking into it, was life sciences use cases. So basically, if you are in a country, like in the example in Switzerland, where you have very strict regulations about any kind of biomedical and patient data, but you want to experiment, like, I don't know, on targeted drug therapies based on the genome of a patient, and you have genome samples, it's obviously super difficult to go to your company lawyer and say, yeah, I have a genome scans of entire country population. Can I just put them on Azure? That would be like a very interesting conversation very quickly. And thanks to the whole setup around confidential computing and Kubernetes and the remote worker nodes, you can actually do it in a way that you are happy, you have your infrastructure at hand whenever you need, you have enough GPUs, your lawyers are happy, and also the business stakeholders are happy because the drugs being manufactured very fast.
That's a good one. I can easily see similar use cases on financial services, for example, as well, with highly sensitive data. Now, I think we're getting close to an end. And if we would try to recap, I think the compute power, flexibility, as I already mentioned, low barrier entry, automations are some of the reasons why you should use the public cloud for AI. Now, when it comes to some of the reasons or some of the things that you should bear in mind, I can easily look at the opportunity to use open source tools, especially if you have, for example, data or projects running on multiple clouds. The skill gap as well, like why would you use open source? It's because you would have consistency across the skills that you need. And Maciek keeps telling me and trying to remind me that in the long run, there should be, or there's going to be a consolidation of the ML efforts within an organization that probably is going to reshape the industry even more. Is there anything that I missed, Maciek?
No, but since you usually ask about like a thought for AI for tomorrow now, I will do the honors and ask you what is your thought for.
Oh, wow. It took you one season to take partly my place in asking questions. My thought of the AI for tomorrow being maybe hand in hand with what we discussed today is you should get started with machine learning if it's something you're interested into, and don't use the lack of compute power, lack of a machine as an excuse, because you have the public cloud right there. And I think the more we grow into this, the more we're going to see it as a commodity. We get started on a public cloud, and that's normal. What about your thought, Maciek?
I will switch to giving practical hints. There is actually one good thing that people forget about if you are like looking at your options. There are obviously the three major public clouds, but there are also other options which are on the same level, like Oracle Cloud or IBM Cloud, that you can use as well with the same tooling. And they obviously, since they are like new kids on the block and have very low market share, they have competitive prices. So if you want to experiment for cheap, that's a place to look at.
Now I have a question, and I know we're supposed to end. But what about the public sector organizations? Are they able to run on their AI projects on the public cloud? That's something we didn't touch upon.
But depends on the country. Obviously, the privileged ones, which basically have the major cloud providers on their soil, like in US, there are federal cloud regions that are basically AWS dedicated to the federal government and the public sector. So that's super easy. But if you are in a country that does not have that kind of capabilities or is not part of the same alliance block, then not really.
Okay, that's good to know. I think it's an important reminder for some countries. I would be also curious if there is like maybe I'm crazy now, an open source public cloud.
You mean completely open public cloud for federal or like public sector cases?
No,
Not yet, but it's a good startup idea.
not for the public sector only, in general. But I don't think that's necessarily a good startup idea, though.
Well, there are a lot of public clouds, like small public cloud vendors, which base their entire stack of open source technologies, and they are good contributors to the open source community. In Europe, you have like OVH, you have Linode, and so on. They are supporting a lot of open source projects and build their entire stack on completely open tech. There is the initiative by, I don't remember the name now, and they will hate me for that, but they will be on MWC this year for sure. And then there are people around Open Euler project, but I forgot what's the cloud name that they have, but they also build it this way.
Before you forget any other thing, I suggest we wrap it up here for now. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Maciek, for joining me on another podcast episode. This was Ubuntu AI, and your AI journey stops here for now. We'll meet again in 2 weeks with a new episode. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you liked it, as well as let us know what would be the topics that you would like to hear from us. In the meantime, you can also follow more articles from us on Medium. See you soon.
Bye.